Well, good morning and welcome to our viewers on this sunny 13th of June, beautiful winter morning. We had an amazing service here. If you watched us online, because we're live now on a Sunday morning, you would have sensed that there was a real move of God's Spirit amongst these people. And until you've got the faith or at the place or feel ready to come back, just to know that you're loved, and we want to minister to you as best as we can. And to all our other viewers, and a lot of you that would have been here this morning, Richard Oschlager shared a message around breaking the fear and the love of money, and in so doing, setting God's people free to true biblical prosperity, which means we are blessed so that we can be a blessing to others. So I've got Richard here this morning to have an interview, and what I said at the close of your sermon was that people need a miracle which happens in the spirit, but often takes time to translate into the natural. In the same way Jesus spoke to the fig tree and cursed it, but the visible outworking of that action only transpired over a few days. You and I were recently just talking about the need for mentorship and people to be coached into good, sensible financial principles that are biblical but are also practical. And there's some talk about how we're going to put that together. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks, Steve, and just welcome, and just thanks for having me here, and I'm just hi to everyone. But so for several months now, myself and several others in the church have become aware of just financial struggles that some are going through, and really in terms of my heart there was a real anguish around seeing people, God's children, stuck in financial captivity, either through maybe poor decisions that they had made or just poor decisions and circumstances of life with COVID affecting them. And I was challenged to just explore this issue really around the lines of freedom of the captives. So there are a couple of us, we want to provide mentorship, not that I feel super qualified in this area or that I'm an expert, but there are some that have gone through this journey already. They've either gone through crippling financial situations and emerged on the other side, or they've walked a road where they've seen they've lived in this prosperity. And I just feel that there's wisdom within some of the folk in the church. There are gifts that can
Wisdom in the counsel of the multitude.
That's it. And that there might be young families starting out, there could be widows or whoever that they don't know who to turn to, and we'd like to provide a platform for that.
Excellent, yeah. And it was interesting to hear you share some of your own stories this morning. You know, people often look at where others have grown to financially without seeing the roots in the early days. And I think many of us have those kind of stories where it hasn't been instant financial prosperity, but it's been a slow growth. It's commensurate with trusting God, looking to Him, making mistakes, bouncing back, and at the end of the day knowing that it's God who gives us the ability to produce wealth. That irrespective of whether we got 2 talents of wealth or 5 talents or 10 talents, has to do with His capacity that He's given to us. Some people handle 5 better than they would handle 10,
yes,
and vice versa. So I like it that you qualify yourself and say you don't feel you're the most talented, but certainly as your fellow elder in this church, I can see an enormous amount of wisdom and good stewardship in your life and in your family's life, that you haven't been dazzled with the latest gizmos, and you've been a good steward of what you've got, and you're very generous as a person. And those are the characteristics and hallmarks of those that can walk in greater capacities of faithfulness towards finances. So I believe there's a lot of people out there that maybe are 10 talent, but they're only living on a 2 talent mentality. They're only running on 2 cylinders when they could be running on a V8 engine, and it's just that they haven't been mentored, taught, and maybe set free from some of those fears and loves of money that you spoke about this morning. What would you say was a major turning point in your life? Was there a kind of a turning point? Would there have been something that triggered a change in your attitude towards finances?
Probably when I got married. No, no. Look, it actually started well before then. So I became born again when I was at university in my second year, and the Lord laid on my heart this principle of tithing, and I know we can become religious in that practice at times, but I remember getting my first paycheck and just saying, okay, I'm going to start this journey sowing, and that's how it started 20 or so years ago, and in all humility, I can actually say that I've made many mistakes. I have lost large amounts of money through poor decision making, and all sorts of other aspects, not being obedient to God, not listened to the counsel of others. That's cost me. I don't know if I want to share all of it right now, but I have lost chunks of my inheritance, which hurt quite a lot. Through just
maybe you could share some of those stories when we do the financial seminar, which is at the end of July.
Yes.
And just on that, if I could just interrupt for a second, I want you to continue with your story. Is at the end of July, we're going to be having a financial seminar where you'll have a little bit more time to elaborate on some of the points from this morning. But also we're going to have the other voices teaching on the subjects of good financial stewardship. And in particular, there's a pastor from Joburg, Pastor Tafara, who speaks really wisely on this topic. He's got enormous experience in kingdom financial understanding and release of finances. So I want to encourage our viewers to be on the lookout for those dates. It's going to be here at the church. It'll run over the weekend. That's going to be an informative time. Back to your story, Rich.
So I think just in terms of the question of when did I start really doing it, there was a moment when I became born again, and this conviction of learning the habit of sowing, let's call it that. And then when I got married was definitely also a moment, because I generally don't worry too much about the financial aspects. Heather's better at it than me, and she brought into the marriage a form of a gifting in that area. And I think I've been quite challenging as a husband, because I never know what's in the wallet or what's in the bank account. And I've had to learn some better habits from my wife, who has helped me in this regard. And then just a couple of years ago, actually, I just decided to I don't know, just take stock of my life, set some goals in terms of this area. And that also just became maybe a third aspect on the journey of financial freedom.
Yeah, and I think we've all been on a journey.
It's a journey.
When Janet and I decided to put aside the first fruits, or in those days we used to call our tithe, it took a lot of faith, because, 10% of anything is 10%. People say, well, I only get so much, I can't give 10. But when you get a big salary, 10% just becomes a whole lot more.
Yes.
And although we don't have to belabor whether it's 10% or 9% or 11% or 30%, the issue is a question of faith. It always comes, even after being married 35 years, it's still a question of what else could we do with this money? And the realization, but this money doesn't actually belong to us.
Yes.
It's all His, and He's allowed us to work a budget out on 90% or whatever the case is. And that understanding takes time to develop and nurture. And pendulum swings from those who were whipped for financial giving in churches, and the pendulum swings the other way to total apathy, where we think somehow the government pays the bills for the local church.
Yes.
And in the middle, there's an ownership. And Jesus so beautifully says, where your treasure is, your heart will be. And I often wonder, people's heart is not for the local church if it's an indication of their giving. And I'm not saying that will always be the case, but Jesus did speak a lot about money.
Yeah. So I just want to step in on this, because what triggered this whole... I've been preparing this message for probably about 3 or 4 months. And a lot of it was linked to looking at the... COVID came in and the church finances started collapsing in terms of... I wouldn't say collapsing, the Lord provides. But I did see that the ability to give was curtailed by a lot of people. And for me, it's not an issue of giving. It's an issue because God will look after his church. So that for me, my faith issues on that are not challenged. But what it did mean is that folk were struggling. And so for me, the issue is the issue of the heart. I mean, God doesn't want to see folk, his children, going through that level of trauma. We need to take hold of what he's got for us. And so this issue of freedom, financial freedom, and the freedom of captivity from the snares of this world, that's where this actually really was birthed from a sense of compassion. And it's the love of God, and he wants us to have that love in this area of finances as well. Being able to pour it out to others is such a blessing itself. It really is.
Yeah, I just have to punctuate that statement, with a huge exclamation mark. That something about giving releases the manifestation of God's love.
Yes.
Giving can be guilt-driven. And having said that, there was a time when we did give with a little bit of a guilt sense.
Yes.
But even then, the giving was blessed.
Yes.
Because there was a sense of freedom that came with giving. Even when it was slightly guilt-motivated, you've got to give your 10th every month, and we're having a tough month, and you give it, and it's a little bit grudgingly. But even in that, there was something of, this feels right. This feels like the honorable thing to do. How much more now that we've been set free from the fear of not giving to the joy of giving,
yes,
that brings a huge amount of love into our life. You can't outgive God. And God is the biggest lover. He's the greatest lover. And everything about him is he's a giving God. And that's the demonstration of the scripture that says God is love.
Yes. And I mean, Jesus showed the love of God through practical measures as well. He dealt with people at a practical level. And this aspect of provision, it's just another way in which we can demonstrate the love of God. Because wherever there's a need, God has given us the mechanisms and the means as his ambassador to meet that need, be it through healing, be it through praying for release of whatever hurt it could be it financial. We are his hands and his feet, and we should be a conduit for living water to flow through us. And that living water is many things.
Also, this morning in your message, you alluded to Heather being a good financial manager.
Yes. And
I want to comment on that. That often in the past church life, there was this thing of the man, to be the head of the home, has to do all the financial stuff. And in our early marriage, that was sort of ingrained into me. I had to make the financial budget, and in a discussion with my wife, of course, but at the end of the day, it rested on me to make sure the finances work properly. And over the years, I discovered that she's actually much better than me. And she can make the budget stretch much further than I can.
Yes.
And she's frugal, and she's really good with money. And more, out even at a subconscious level, unintentionally, the financial matters have been entrusted to Janet to run.
Yes.
And she's done an amazing job. The financial decisions she's made even included the house where we live, the choosing of the house, which in hindsight was one of the best financial decisions we made.
Yes.
So I just want to say to you watching, the 15 minutes this morning interview is finished, but it's been great chatting to you. There's more to come on this topic. Diarise those dates. They're going to come to you for the end of July. And thank you, Richard. Thank you for your input. God bless you.
Thank you.